Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Foothill Church. Glad you're here today. We're going to do something a little bit different today because I just kind of want to talk to you for a little bit. But first of all, let me just say, college students, I think this is kind of last week of school, right? And so congratulations on making it through another year, and hopefully we'll see you back here in the fall. But it's been great having you, and thanks for so many of you were serving, and that was very, very helpful throughout the year. Next week, just so you're aware, we start the book of Philippians, one of the greatest books in the New Testament, and we're going to take about 13 weeks to go through the book of Philippians. That's a little faster than what we normally do, but we're really excited to do this. We're going to call this happiness, because it's all about joy and how we find true happiness in life, and so you don't want to miss that, and we're going to take that almost all the way through the summer. Now, where we are today is we have been going through a series called The Move, and what we've said is, look, we think God is moving. We want God to move. We're saying, God, we want something extra. We want something additional. We don't want to just do church as usual. We want to see what you might do. So we looked back 3 weeks ago, and we talked about the possibilities of what that could be like. What if God would move? What if God in our generation would do what he's done in previous generations, where they saw genuine revival and a genuine move of God. And then 2 weeks ago, we looked and said, well, then we got to be prepared for that, because if God wants to do that, then we want to be prepared for the presence of God. And we looked and said, what does that look like? That we can prevent it, or we can be a people that prepare for it, and we want to prepare for it. And then last week, we said, let's take a look at praying for a move of God, and how can we pray for that, and what does that look like? And hopefully we would see people that would say, you know what? I'm really going to make this a matter of my prayer life. I know there's been some people that have let us know that, you know what, I really feel that burden, and I'm going to continue to pray for God to move, and not just at Foothill Church, but in our culture and in our world, in this community, in this region. That's what we want to see God do. We need a move of God. And so today, what I want to talk to you about is what we're calling providing for a move of God. And so I just if you're new today and this is your first time at Foothill Church, I want you to know this is unusual. Usually we'll just open up a book of the Bible and start walking through like we'll do next week. And today, if you're new, you just get to listen in, okay, on kind of some stuff that's going on, some things that I want to talk to you about as a family, and just say, here's where we're going, here's what God is doing at Foothill Church, and for you to be aware of what's coming down the pike in the future, okay? So let me just read a few things to you. First of all, in Psalm 96, David says this. He says, "Sing to the Lord, sing praise to his name. Tell of his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous works among all the peoples. For great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods." And then in Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 23 and 24 says, "Thus says the Lord, let not the wise man boast in his wisdom. Let not the mighty man boast in his might. Let not the rich man boast in his riches, but let him who boasts boast in this, that he understands and knows me, that I am the Lord who practices steadfast love, justice, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, declares the Lord." Paul picks up on this again in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and he says, it's written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. So I want to do a little boasting this morning, not in me, not in Foothill Church, in God. I want us to hear of the great things that God has done. I want to declare his glory, if you will, his marvelous works, and let you hear. Because listen, if Foothill Church is anything, it's because of the grace and the goodness of the Lord. If we've accomplished anything of eternal value, if anything's been accomplished in your life, if you can look and say, you know what, this ministry has changed my life, or this ministry has done something for me, then that's because of God. And I want to boast in him this morning, in his goodness and his grace. So let me just, I think we fail to do what God has called us to do if we don't say out loud, listen to the goodness of the Lord. Listen to what God has done. So let me just kind of take you on a little tour of the last 6 years. I got here 6 years ago, and God has been incredibly, incredibly gracious to us as a church. So as I look back, I go, you know what? Over the last 6 years, look at what God has done. 6 years ago, we were a church of 141 people, roughly, okay, right? That was our average for that year. Today, we're a church of about 800 people. That's a 29% increase per year. 6 years ago, there were about 5 kids in our children's program, and 4 of them were mine. This year, just this year, we're averaging 129 kids in our children's program. 5 years ago, we didn't have a home group ministry. We didn't have a men's group. We just finished up our home group ministry. We had about 45 guys in our men's group. We had over 400 people in our last session of our home groups. We weren't reaching out into our community. Today, we're partnering with ministries both nationally, locally, regionally. We had 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we had one pastor who didn't know what he was doing, and today we have 10 who don't know what they're doing. But that's better. We have more people. Now, okay, but listen to this. In the last 6 years, Jesus has saved, that we know of, 342 people. 342 people that have said, Jesus Christ has changed my life. And in the last 6 years, 214 people have been baptized. Just 34 a few weeks ago, right here in our morning services. But those numbers are just abstract, right? They're just numbers. And we don't want to just be about numbers, because part of what we want to be about is stories and what God has done. And that's one of the greatest things about seeing what God has done these last 6 years. Because I look out here and I see men who are stepping up to the plate in their homes. I see guys who are saying, you know what? I am not what I used to be 5 years ago or 2 years ago or 1 year ago. God is changing my life. I see women. I see families. I see fathers and mothers whose hearts are turned back toward their children. I see children whose hearts are turned back toward their fathers. Reconciliation happening. God has done some absolutely incredible things over these last 6 years, and I am so grateful to him for what he's done. He has been so good to us, and I think it's good for us just to sort of stop and revel in that for a moment, that we have the privilege of belonging and being in a place where God is on the move, where we can say, look, people almost every week are being saved. People on a regular basis are being discipled. People are being baptized. God has been good, Foothill Church, and I want you to recognize that this morning. But here's the thing. God isn't finished with us, right? God is not finished with Foothill Church. He has so much more that he wants to do. I think he's just beginning. I think he's preparing I think all these last 6 years have simply been a prelude to what he wants to do in the future. I have this sense that God is on the move. I remember when I first started, came 6 years ago, and I remember being incredibly discouraged. I think I was very naive. I was a little younger, a lot dumber, and I remember just feeling like this thing is never going to go, and wondering. I mean, I felt like I guess the image I would give to you is as though God gave this plot of land and said, "Okay, plant it and grow a garden here." And I was like, all right, woohoo, I'm going to get in there. We're going to grow a garden. There's going to be fruit next season, and this is going to be awesome. I'm just going to start planting. And I went into the field, and I looked, and I'm like, okay, this is not what I thought I was getting. This is different. There's like hubcaps and trash and, needles and glass shards, and I can't even begin planting yet. I've got to clean. We've got a lot of work to do to get this thing sort of up and going. And so we went to work. This isn't just me. God's help, and we started cleaning out, and we longed for the day when sort of the tomatoes would grow and the corn would be going, and we'd smell the lilac and all these things, but it wasn't happening right away, and I was discouraged. And I remember Michelle came to me one day, and she found this passage in Isaiah, and she said, isn't this awesome? Because this whole passage talks about, I think it's Isaiah 25 or 28, where she said that this whole passage talks about, you're not always going to be planting. At some point, you're going to harvest. And I feel like where we are right now is that we're finally beginning to smell the lilac. We're finally beginning to see some of the harvest. But I have a feeling that we haven't seen anything yet. The best is yet to come. So that's forced us over the last few years to go, okay, God, you're growing your church. We're not smart enough to do this. You're being good to us. You've been incredible. Now what do we do? What do we do if we keep growing? Because I feel like, God, you didn't just say stop. I mean, you want us to keep reaching people. What do we do if you move? What if a move of God actually comes to our culture again, and that Foothill Church gets caught up in that? What happens? Where do we go? Because the truth of the matter is, I'm not sure we're ready. I don't know that we've got the space. I don't know how we're going to do this. So we talked about this as a staff and a board. In fact, we've talked about it ad nauseum for about 2 years. And what are we going to do? So here's what I want to do. I'm going to show you a video here. I want you to watch this video with me and kind of explaining some things that are happening. And then I'm going to come back up and I'm going to sort of just put flesh on the bones for you and help us understand where we're going, what we're doing, what we sense that God is up to. Okay? So let's roll the video and then I'll come back up. So I don't know what it's like in your home. I know that on weekday morning, Monday morning, everybody's tired. They wake up the kids, they get ready for school, they go through their routine, we gather at times for breakfast, or one kid's upstairs, one's in the bathroom, some are screaming at each other. But I know that my heart and Michelle's heart and what we want for our kids every single day, that we send them off to school, whether we stop in that moment or we're praying on our way to school or we're thinking about our kids, we're saying, you know, Lord, we want their affections grow deeper for you. Make them more satisfied in you. Let them find a greater satisfaction in you than anything else in the world. So I got here in 2006, and very quickly we realized that we had to move because we were sort of lost in this cavern of a gym. And so we decided we had this piece of property over on Grand Avenue where we meet now. And so we held a fundraiser and talked to the people about, hey, what if we could all kind of be together in a room that fit us as a congregation at that time. And so through this fundraiser, we rolled it out to the congregation, and by God's grace, we needed to raise $100,000. We ended up raising about $125,000. And so that was summer of 2007, and we were able to move over to Grand Avenue in November of 2007, and it was just exactly what we needed. Churches don't stagnate. Churches either go forward or go backwards. It's kind of like our spiritual lives. You don't just stop growing. You don't just kind of reach this level, this plateau. You either keep progressing in your spiritual life or you move backwards. And it's the same thing with the church. We've watched for the last 5 years, by God's grace, God has done this. Foothill Church has grown by 25% a year. That's incredible. So when we look at our statistics, we have our high times, our low times, but if you just look at the statistics across the board, we are nearly 80% full on Saturday night. We are over 80% full at 9 a.m. And we were usually in the 90 percentile for 10:45. And yet, when we got to the fall of 2012, we knew we were headed towards a problem. We saw our growth slow. And it was all because as you looked around, there was just no room to put anybody else. We got to decide, are we going to be more for the people who are not here yet, or is this going to be more about the people who are here? What it's going to take to move from Grand Avenue to Baseline is everybody getting involved. We need to raise about $550,000. And that may sound like a lot, and it is. One of the first things we're going to do is we're going to use 10% of the money we raise to give back to our community. Like
the outreach over at Stanton Elementary. We're going to use it to help organizations that are fighting slavery, or help crisis pregnancy centers, or help the Azusa Homework House. And so we're not just taking all this money and applying it to ourselves. The whole point of this move is reaching our community, having space to reach our community. So that's what we're going to do. But the rest of that money we're going to take, and we're going to make it so that this gymnasium over at Baseline can be transformed on a weekly basis into a worshipful, sacred space where you want to come in. You understand, we're not just moving forward from where we are. We are moving forward because we're standing on the shoulders of people who gave sacrificially, people that are still in our congregation that have been praying for years that God would move at Foothill Church. And so here we are now. Here we are, and we have a chance to be the people that a future generation will say, I'm standing on the shoulders. My life was changed. My family was changed because this group at Foothill Church in 2013 gave so that I could come to know Jesus Christ as my Lord and my Savior. We've decided, God, if we're going to continue to grow, then we have to make a move. We have to move out to where you want us to go. We have to be willing to move and listen to your voice and to follow where you lead us. And so that's led us around the corner to a location that's free. I mean, we don't have to pay rent. We don't have to buy a piece of property. We don't have to go through zoning laws. We don't have to erect a building. We've got a building. Now we just need to come over here and get it ready so that it's an environment where we want to worship. It's not just a gym. We use it for a gym during the week for our school, but it's a location where we want to come together. We can come together and we can worship together. And here's the thing, I want you to come and worship with us. I want you to move with me. I want you to move with us. I want you to move where God is leading us. We've prayed, we've fasted, we've called on God, and God's made it very clear, this is where I want you to go. So the question is, will you move with us? Will you come with me? I hope you will. I want you to move. I want us to move where God has us going. So come with us. Will you do that? Will you come and be a part of what God is doing at Foothill Church?
So you ready to go? So this is what we're doing. We're moving. And I wanted to let you guys know that today. And I kind of want to just take the rest of our time and just answer questions that would pop up around this. What does this mean? What are we doing? Where are we going? Where is this place? Some of you don't even know where that is. And I'm going to end by talking about why. Why? So I'll get to the why in just a minute because I think that's the most important question. But for now, I just want to kind of talk through and show you some of the other questions. I know you're probably going to have a million questions. We've actually got a section on our website now that you'll see is called the Move Campaign. And if you want to go there, underneath there, you'll see some FAQs down at the bottom. And you can click on that, and it'll give you about 30 different questions that we've heard, that we've listened to, and we've said, okay, here's what we're going to do. It's interesting, 5 years ago, I stood right here, about 5.5 years ago. It was our first Sunday here at Grand Avenue. We'd moved over from Baseline, and I said, don't get too comfortable because this may not last 5 years. I'm not the prophet or a son of a prophet, but the Lord has done that, and we're looking and saying, okay, it's time to go, and it's time to move over. So let's talk about kind of what this all means and some of the questions you might have. So the first one is just, where are we going? Where is Baseline? Okay, well, let me show you. It's around the corner, 0.4 miles away, okay? I mean, literally, you could walk there in 5 minutes. You can drive there in about 30 seconds. You can get on your bike and be there in about a minute and a half, right? So it is literally around the corner from where we are right now. The church owns a school and a preschool here in Glendora. Foothill Christian School is right around the corner, and then preschool's over on Route 66. And we're going over to where the school campuses are, where our offices are, and there's a gymnasium there where we first started meeting when I moved to town. And so we're going back there, okay? Now, you say, well, was Baseline the only choice? Were there any other options available? Well, here's what I'd say. there's always options. The question is, what do we want to pay for those options, right? And we want to be as good of stewards as we possibly can. Here's what we needed. We looked and said, we need a place that can seat a minimum of 500 people. And so where do we find that? Well, we can go rent a warehouse. That costs money that now can't be used for ministry. We could go buy a piece of land and try to go that route. Well, that's a few $1,000,000. Or we have a free gymnasium right around the corner that's in our neighborhood that we could retrofit, repurpose so that it works for us and it stays and continues to be a worshipful environment. Okay, so we've done everything we know how to do to make this campus work. Okay, those of you who have been here for the 6 years or 5 years or 4 years, you know how many times we've tried, the machinations we've gone through to try and make this environment work, right? Everything from, we pulled out the pews and we put in chairs because that seats more people. We went to multiple services. We tried Sunday night. That was horrible. We didn't do it ever again. We went to 3 Sunday morning services. That was too early, too late. We went to 2 morning services Saturday night. We tried to get you guys to sit together. You sent me hate mail, all that stuff, right? We've done everything we know how to do to make this environment work. And here we are and saying, okay, baseline's free. Baseline will work. We can actually do something over there to make that gymnasium feel like a worship center, feel like a very worshipful location. And that's our intention. I'll talk about that in a minute. So when are we moving? What's the goal? Well, the goal is that we would be in, of course, there can always be delays, but our goal right now is September 21st and 22nd of this year. So just a few months away. We're going to get things ready over the summer, and we're going to go for it. Because listen, if we don't move, if we don't have room by September, we're done. We will not grow. If we grew even 10% over where we were last September, we would literally have nowhere to put any more bodies, okay? We'd have to turn people away. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So we're saying, okay, we can do it. Now, by the way, for those of you who are wondering, we're not changing service times. There's still going to be a 5 p.m. Saturday night. There's still going to be a 9 and 10:45 Sunday morning. For the time being, we're not doing anything to our service times. We're just going to move and kind of redo this all over there. That sanctuary will seat, we can seat it a number of different ways, but it'll seat up to about 530 people, and then it actually has room to expand to even go beyond that should we need that. Okay, so in other words, we have room to grow over there. We can start to fill out that and move forward. Well, then, is Baseline a permanent solution for the church? Well, I hope not, right? I don't ever want to say something's permanent, like we're done, we'll never go any farther, we'll never do anything else, because that's just not, I think, how God works. Like I said, we came over here 5 years ago and said, this isn't a permanent solution. We're grateful for what God's given us. By the way, I love this sanctuary. I love the stained glass windows. I love just about everything about this place. We come in, turn the lights, and go, right? And it's great. We have great parking down the street and on the streets and all that. I mean, this is a wonderful location. It's just too small. And so now we're saying, we want to go, and we want to go and say, God, what do you have for us, right? So we're hoping, we hope to outgrow this place. We're hoping to outgrow that place. What a great problem to have. And then we got to decide what to do. I don't know if we plant a church. I don't know if we do satellite locations. I don't know what we do at this point, but we're saying, God, what would you have for us? But we know that we need to go to a place that has better room. Because look if this is a permanent solution, going over there is a permanent solution, then we're saying, God, once we fill that, then we're done. We don't want to grow anymore. And if you've not heard me say this, I've said it I don't know how many times, and I'll say it again. That's never an option. We're never going to say we're done growing. That's never an option for a church. There's more people to reach. There's people who are going to hell without Jesus. We're not going to say we're done reaching people. That's not going to happen. Okay, so you got to sort of get used to that and go, all right. See, I don't think that a shoe should be telling your foot how big it can be, right? Your foot should just be able to go, I need to grow. Get me a better shoe, right? That's a church. We've got to be in a location where we're not being artificially constricted, which is what Grand Avenue is. Grand Avenue right now is constricting us, and we need the ability to grow so that more people can come in and hear about Jesus. Okay, so the next question is then, how much is this going to cost? You heard me say on the video, it's going to cost $550,000. Now listen, that's a bargain. That's a ridiculous bargain for a church of our size to be able to go and find a sanctuary of 500, 600, that can do that. That's an incredible bargain because we own the property. The church already owns it. We just have to retrofit it for our use. And by the way, that $550,000 is a bare bones budget. Okay, just to give you some context, when we moved over here, we had to come in and do all kinds of stuff. There was popcorn ceiling in here. There was this little speaker array jutting out of here that had to be redone. We had to put new lights in, new sound equipment, new all that. Just the construction to come over here of repainting and getting this place ready for Foothill Church to move in was $100,000. The video, lighting, all that equipment was an additional $100,000. Okay, so when I say we raised $125 to come over here, we did. It cost us about $225 to move over here. Okay, so going over there, we get to do that for about $550,000. Okay, that and I'll talk to you about all that's going to entail. Okay, so what is that? What is the money going to be used for? Okay, and so you heard me talk a little bit about it. The first 10% is we're going to literally just right off the top of every gift, we're going to take 10% of everything that's given and we're going to use it to reach our community, reach our region, reach our world, okay? And we're going to do things both locally, regionally, and internationally. So you've got, when you came in this morning, you got this packet right here, this thing. If you look on the inside, there's a whole section that talks about some of the projects that we're going to be involved in. Right here in the middle, this MOVE, we're going to minister to at-risk women in Thailand. We have a partnership with a group called Brianna's House of Joy, which was started by a family member of somebody at Foothill Church. And they are a home that rescues girls that are at risk of being put into the sex slave industry. And they educate them and ultimately send them off to college, get them ready for life, get them so they're never caught up in that industry. But they also go out and they do these outreaches into northern hill tribes in Thailand that are susceptible to traffickers coming through and capturing these young girls. And we're saying, man, we can do something about that. We can make a difference. So part of your money is going to go to that. We're gonna continue to give to Foothill's Pregnancy Resource Center, literally the only crisis pregnancy center in the San Gabriel Valley. It's over in Duarte, and it can't even come close to competing with the resources of a place like Planned Parenthood. Okay, they live on a shoestring budget. And there's all these regulations. Okay, if you're going to have an ultrasound machine, that's fine. You can show mothers that there's a baby living inside of them, but we're going to put all these onerous burdens of how you repair and upkeep and all that, and they don't have the money for that. So we're going to give, and we're going to make sure a place like that stays in business and continue rescuing children and continue counseling those who have gone through abortion and their lives have just been racked by that. That's a worthy investment. We're gonna keep giving to Azusa Homework House. Some of you college students probably volunteer there. We have volunteers from Foothill Church that go over there, and they need all kinds of resource helping. They need help in painting. If you did the Stanton Elementary outreach, then you kind of know what we're going to do. We're going to go, and there's projects that we're going to get involved in, painting, there's a recreational facilities they need that we can help build. We're going to get involved in that, and we get to make a difference there. And then we're going to be partnering with a group called Enlace in El Salvador. And one of the things they do is they're a humanitarian sort of agency that goes in and shares the gospel, but at the same time, they do things that meet real needs in that culture. And one of the needs is that people in El Salvador, they live in, terrible conditions in these poor areas, and they have open stoves into their homes where the smoke is being inhaled, and they contract all kinds of respiratory illnesses. Well, we're going to partner with them and do this fundraiser for an eco stoves that keep that from happening and reduce the rate of respiratory illness by over 60%. And then at the same time, they go in and tell them about Jesus. That's what we want to be about. So that's what we're going to do locally and internationally and regionally through the money that you give. But then we're going to do, obviously, we got to move over there, and there's things. And if you've been around there, we're going to take part of that money, and we're going to make an absolutely fantastic children's program. Our children already love Foothill Kids. They're going to go crazy when they get over there. Okay, first of all, it's got this insane playground area already for them that they can use. We've got a retrofit bit and kind of do some things in different rooms. There's going to be an activity room they go into. There's going to be blow-up games for them when they arrive and they want to go. I mean, they're going to get done. They're going to say, Mom and Dad, I'm so excited. Get up out of bed. Let's go. I want to be at church. And they're not going to want to leave. That'll be your problem then, okay? So we're excited for our kids. Our kids are, and listen, we don't just babysit and we don't entertain our kids. We want them to have fun, but we want to teach them the gospel. And that's what we do every single week in Foothill Kids. And then we're going to raise money for the sanctuary. Because look, I'm going to just be honest with you. I don't want to worship in a gym. I have no desire to, see, backboards and hoops and, a scoreboard. Unless it's going to be like Jesus 20, devil 10. I mean, something like that. I mean, I have no desire to, we want to make this a worshipful environment. Something that you come in and say, you know what, I want to worship in here. This is great. Okay, so we're transforming. Literally, we've worked hard to think, how can we transform this gym to turn into a sanctuary? And so we've got a kind of a picture, just a rendering, that'll give you a little bit of an idea of what it looks like. That's when the house lights are on and they can be dimmed and all that, and it can create a really intimate environment. There's a center screen right there on the stage that's rear projected that then can be used for different themes and things like that. The side screens, large screens for doing worship lyrics and sermon notes and different things like that. So this is going to have a brand new sound system, brand new video lighting system, because over there, if you went there right now, there's what they have is what we have for the school is just not workable for us. It wouldn't accommodate our needs. And so we're saying we've got to go over there, and if we want to make it, if we want to sort of retain some of the intimacy, then we've got to do this. Lighting is going to be a big part of that. Massive curtaining system that's going to stretch around the entire gym and hide away all the parts that you're like, I don't want to see this when I'm worshiping, right? I want this to feel like a sanctuary, not a junior high gymnasium. We're going to do that. Okay, so that's what the money is going to be used for. We're going to use it. That's about $550,000 for all those things to get done. That is a bare minimum of what we need. Okay? So now how are we going to raise the money? Because that's a big question, right? How do we do this? Well, like I said on the video, the only way this is going to happen is if everyone gets involved. Everyone gets involved. So let me show you a fascinating passage in 1 Chronicles chapter 29. You can turn there if you've got your Bibles. You can look on the ones in front of you, and it's on page 357. 1 Chronicles 29, and we'll start reading. Here's what's happening. David wants to build a temple for God. He wants to do a building project. God has said, David, you're not going to do it, but your son's going to do it, but you're going to provide the resources for it to happen. And so over time, he had collected all kinds of stuff as the king. The people had brought in and all that, and so he has these gifts to give, but then David, of course, himself had his own resources. And so listen to what he says in 1 Chronicles chapter 29. Start reading in verse 6. He says, moreover, in addition to all that I have provided for the holy house, I have a treasure of my own gold and silver. Okay, this is coming out of my bank account. And because of my devotion to the house of God and my God, I give it to the house of my God. And then he tells in verse 4 what he gives, 3,000 talents of gold, gold of Ophir, 7,000 talents of refined silver for overlaying the walls, for all the work to be done by the craftsmen, gold for the things of gold, silver for the things of silver. And then he says, who then will offer willingly, consecrating himself today to the Lord? Okay, so here's what David just did. He looks and says, all right, we've got this building project to do. We've got to raise some money. And David says, all right, I've prayed, I've planned, and now the time to build is approaching, and so what are we going to do? And so he stands up in front of the people, and he says, all right, here's exactly what I'm going to do personally. And now, what will you do? Willingly. Not because you've been coerced, not because, you've been strong-armed, because willingly you look and say, do you have the devotion to the house of my God? The way David says, I have a devotion to the house of God, and I personally want to do this. I want to give. And then look what happens. Keep going. Look at verse 6. He says, then the leaders of the fathers' houses made their free will offerings, and did also the leaders of the tribes, the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and the officers over the king's work. And then they gave, and it tells us what they gave in verse 7. And whoever had precious stones, they gave those. And then verse 9, then the people rejoiced because they had given willingly, for with a whole heart they had offered freely to the Lord. David the king also rejoiced greatly. So you see what's happening here? David goes, all right, we have to build this thing. We have to do this. So here's what I'm going to do. And then now what will you do? And they give. And they give willingly. But I think David understood a principle, and that is David could not expect the people to give willingly or generously if he wasn't willing to do that personally himself. So here's kind of, if you've been with us for 6 years, you know I've done this before, and I'm going to do it again. I think it's very important that you know what your pastor is going to do. And I want you to hear me. I say this because if I'm not generous, you shouldn't be. If I won't give, you shouldn't give. And I think I owe it to you to tell you what Michelle and I are going to pledge to do over the next 2 years. Exactly what we're going to do. Okay, so we've thought about it. We've prayed about it. We actually kind of said, hey, let's you think, you pray, I'll think, I'll pray, and let's kind of come back together and what do you think God would have us do? And it's funny how this works. It almost works every time this way. I just think that's God. And I remember talking to her one day. We were on the phone, and I said, "Okay, babe, what do you think?" And she's like, "Well, what do you think?" Well, what do you think? Well, okay. So I told her. She's like, "That's crazy. That's exactly what I thought." And both of us were like, "Yikes! Oh my gosh, how are we going to do this?" So here's what we said. We said over the next 2 years, we're going to pledge to give $12,000 to the campaign. Let me tell you how we arrived. I think kind of, at least on my side, how part of what the thinking was. I have 6 people in my family, 4 kids, Michelle and I. And I look and say, look, Foothill Church is not just about me. It's not just about Michelle. It's about them. I want to see this be, pound for pound, the strongest, healthiest church it can be. And I believe in what we're doing here. And so I want to give on behalf of my children. I want to give $1,000 a year per person in our family. That's kind of was my reasoning. Okay, you may have completely different reasons. I'm just telling you how I process this. Okay, $12,000. Now, for some of you, that's nothing. For me, holy cow. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I really don't. I don't have that sitting in a mattress. I don't have that. I'm not just going to go to the bank today and, go to the ATM several times over the next few weeks, check that out, boom, I'm done. That's going to be plotting over the next 2 years to see, God, what will we do? But let me tell you a little bit of track record here so that you kind of understand how this has worked out for me. Okay, when I was a teenager, I was probably, 16, 17 years old. The church that I was a part of did a building campaign. And they said, everybody's need you to give. So I'm like, I'm a teenager. What can I give? I got a job at a little French bakery. I remember I got a raise, and I remember being like so stoked because I was making $4.35 an hour. It's like, yeah, they raised me from $4.10 to $4.30. That's a quarter, right? It was awesome. So I didn't know what to do, and so I pledged. I think it was a 2-year campaign, and I pledged $400. I'm like, okay, God, how do I do this? So help me, and I'll just start paying it. And I paid as much as I could, as fast as I could. And it was done. I was like, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought. I was done within a few months. I was a teenager. I didn't know how much money was. I didn't know how you do that. Fast forward a few years, and we have another building campaign. And this time, I'm married, and I go, okay, I'm going to do this. And I pledge $2,000. I got bills. I got children. I don't know how to do this. And so I was like, okay, God, help me. If this is what you've laid on my heart to do, then we're going to do this. And so Michelle and I just started attacking it. We did as much as we could, as fast as we could. I mean, just let's get this done. And within less than a year, we had our $2,000 paid. was on staff at a church before I came out here. Same thing. We did it again. This time we're like, okay, God, you're kind of stretching us. You want us to do more. So this time we pledged $5,000. We're like, yikes. Again, don't know how we're going to do that. But we said, this is what we feel like God's calling us to do. We sense this is, Lord, you'd have us be obedient in this way. So we did it. And we paid as much as we could, as fast as we could. And it took us a little over a year, and we were done. Came out here in December of 2006, went into our building campaign that following summer to move to Grand Avenue. We said, God, what should we do? And we both felt like we should give $10,000. And so, again, it's like, and let me tell you something about that building campaign. We told people in July and told them we need to have it paid by December. And they did. And God helped Michelle and I. I mean, I still look back and go, how did that math work? What did you do? How did you make that work? I can't believe this actually happened. We were able to pay that thing. It was amazing how God opened up things. There were resources that I didn't even know were there that kind of popped open. Well, listen, why does that happen? It's God. It's just God. That's how God does this. So we come now and we go, okay, $12,000, Lord. There's a lot more people at Foothill Church. See, here's the thing. God could rain down money from heaven. Sure, if he wanted to. And he never does he? You know what he does? He goes, if I've put this in the life of the church, if I've called this church to do something, I will put the people in this church that will make it happen. That's what's happening. Now, let me tell you something. $12,000 is nothing. And I want to tell you this for this reason. It's nothing because God's the owner of a cattle on 1,000 hills, right? And I'm asking him for one cow, right? But more than that, there's people, you're sitting where you're sitting today, literally. This building was built back in the 60s. You are sitting where you're sitting today because there's people that mortgage their homes. There's people that made crazy sacrifices for Foothill Church to even exist. And so Michelle and I are going, I believe in this. I believe in what God is doing. And we just are going, you know what? We'll do this, God. This is absolutely thrilling. So then I went to the leadership of Foothill Church, and I'm talking about now board and staff. Okay, we got 5 board members, we've got a staff of about 10, and I went to them and says, guys, this doesn't just start with Michelle and me, this starts with us. So what will you do? And so they all prayed about it, thought about it, and I'm happy to tell you that your leadership, your staff and board have pledged over the next 2 years to give $75,400. That's 14% of the total goal from 4% of this church. That's incredible. That's generous. That's what they're going to do. So let me explain kind of how this works. I've told you it's a 2-year pledge starting April, not ending until April 2015. It's us looking and saying, okay, what can we do over the next 2 years? What would God have us do? God, how would you stretch us? Let me tell you some things about that. Let me tell you what it's not. This is not a one-time gift that you've got to come up with by next week. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not saying how can what can you put together over the next few days or weeks or whatever. This is saying this is over the next 2 years, 24 months. What can you do? What can you believe God for? What are you willing to be stretched for the sake of the gospel? That's what this is about. Is Lord, we want to see. I want to be used. I want to be spent. That's how I feel. I was like, God, spend me, use me. This is all yours. None of this belongs to me, right? None of it. And so you use it how you want to. So it's not just a one-time gift. But the second thing is I want you to know, this is not in lieu of, but over and above your regular giving. Listen, if you just stop your regular giving and give to this, well, that doesn't help at all, right? We still have to turn lights on. We still have salaries to pay. We still have missionaries to send. We still have ministry to do. Okay, so let me tell you how this works for us, right? Michelle and I, we give, and many have heard me say this before, we give a percentage of our income. That means the first check I write every month is to this church. Okay, a percentage. We say it's going to be this. Last year, again, I think you should know, last year, Michelle and I gave away 14% of our gross income. Okay, and we're saying, God, this is on top of that. So what do you want us to do? How can we do this over the next 2 years? And God, give us that ability to fulfill this pledge that you've laid on our heart. And I'm absolutely confident that he will. I don't know how, but it's thrilling to see how he always does it, and I'm confident that he will. So okay, Chris, but what happens if we exceed our goal? What if we raise more than $550,000? Well, let me just say, I hope that happens. That would be awesome. Because let me tell you, I just told you, this is a bare bones budget to get over to baseline. That's a lot of B's, I know. But this is the very minimum to get over there and do church. There are things that we cannot do unless we exceed our budget. Okay, like we'd like to get the new lobby ready, but we can't. There's no money for that. We'd like to increase our curb appeal. I mean, listen, one of the things that I love about Grand Avenue, it's on Grand Avenue, right? This is the most amazing church location that I know of in our area. And people drive by, how'd you hear about Foothill Church? I just drove by. Well, now we're kind of tucked back there on baseline. And so we need something that's going to help it sort of be set out and pop up and, everybody says, oh yeah, and I want it to be beautiful. I mean, I think as a church, I think what we do in our community architecturally ought to say to them, we value you. We value you and we want to make our city more beautiful because we're here. Well, we can't do that. We don't have the money for that. You know what one of my dreams is? I want a bookstore so bad. I'm kind of a bibliophile, but because I know that there's not one in our area. That people can go and say, I get people asking me all the time, is this a good book? Is this a good author? Whatever. Well, I'd love to fill a bookstore with resources where you could go and say, I can pick that up and I can be confident. This is rock solid stuff. We can't do that. We'd like to be able to buy shuttle vehicles because there's going to be times when that parking lot gets full and we can shuttle from off-site parking. We can't do that. I mean, I could go on and on, right? We'd like to give more money away to ministries and partners that we have. We can't do that. We'd like to create a seed fund for future expansion that God might have. Well, we can't do that. So if God blesses us and we do exceed our budget, we do exceed our goal, I should say, then praise God. Those are some of the things that we would use our money for to be able to do further ministry. All right, so now let's get to the why. Why are we doing this? Bottom line, what is motivating us doing this? Well, let me just give you a few things. Number one, because we believe God isn't finished with us. That God has something more, right? That the task of reaching our world is not finished and won't be until Jesus comes back. Right? And so we're saying, God, we want to reach more people. There are still missionaries to send. There are still families that have not been transformed by the grace of God. There's still a community that is lost. There are still men who are not the men God wants them to be, or women who are not the women God wants them to be. There are families. There are people that are not there. I get notes from ladies every week that are praying, please pray for my husband. And so many of you can look around and go, man, we prayed for my husband, and look, he's sitting here next to me. God has absolutely transformed his life. We need more of that. We want to see more people come, but we can't do that if that guy comes to this church and we say, sorry, we don't have any seats left. God has more in store for us. More people that will be saved, more people that will be baptized, a community that will be reached. Number two, because we want to exist, as you heard me say, more for the people who are not here than those who are. And you know why I say that? It's not because we don't care about you. Of course we do. We want to disciple you. We want to do everything to help you grow. But listen, we're not here to create a club. And there's no competition between growing wider and growing deeper. Churches that just grow wide and not deep are not as wide as they think they are. And churches that just grow deep, we're deep. That's why we're only 12 people. Are not as deep as they think they are. We're saying, God, this is not an either or. This is a both and. We want to be deep and we want to be wide. We want to be impactful and we want to have a depth of spiritual maturity. We ought to long for that. See, we're not creating a club for anyone. This is not about us. This is about people who have not heard and are going to go to hell. Listen, we could pack every church in this community 10 times and be a drop in the bucket. We need more. Number 3, because we sense this is God's timing. We just flat out sense this is God. And you say, well, how did you come up with, what was the process? Well, it's been a slow process, especially for me. I'm the most impatient person I know. This has taken us about 2 years to really pray, think, God, when's this going to happen? It's been a topic of conversation with our board. There's board members here today that will vouch for this for at least 2 years. Eddie, right? For at least 2 years, right? I mean, this is with our staff for at least 2 years. I mean, we've gone through this ad nauseum. We've fasted, we've prayed, and there is a consensus. Now is the time. It's time to move. Number 4, because we're not physically ready for a move of God. Physically ready. Maybe not even spiritually ready. But physically ready, certainly not, right? See, I hope with the last 3 weeks, the reason I wanted to talk about a move of God is I really want us to be hungry for that. I'm hungry for that. I'm like, God, please, pour out we don't want church as usual. I want to see an outpouring. And listen, because if God poured out his Spirit, we would have nowhere to put people. We just wouldn't. I mean, there'd be nowhere to go because we are effectively out of room. Now, I say that, and I've chosen those words on purpose because anybody can look around right now and go, well, there's a seat here, there's a seat there. Saturday night, there's a lot more seats. You're right, there is. I say effectively out of room because, look, there are times, this crowd right now, you are probably we're probably well over 80% in this room full. And let me just kind of explain to you how this works. And there's probably some people sitting out in our family room. Hello. Let me tell you how this works. When a church reaches 70% capacity, it's going to watch from that point on, the rate of growth is going to slow. It's not terrible, but it still can grow, but it's about done. When it reaches 80%, it's going to almost grind to a halt. And if it gets into 90 percentile, you're done. There's no, because look, guys that stand up on platforms and look out here go, this is awesome. I mean, this is so great. Everybody's sitting there like this, and they're crammed together, and they can't breathe, and there's sort of a haze over here because of all the sweat rising up. I love this. And you're all sitting here going, this really sucks. I can't even raise my hands. I don't want to be next to this person. No, there's no room, right? Bible down. That's what I want. I want my space. Right? And this is exactly what happens. That's why a church ceases to grow. People come in and go, it's too full. That's why we opened up and did this stuff in the family room. We can put 50, 40, 50 more people with the back row and plus the family room. We can do that. That's why we did that. Okay? Where we are today, Saturday night service is right around 70%. Okay? We've got room. Chris, how come we don't just move people over to another service? Great idea. And we've tried it for 2 years. Because here's the fact. When I say we're out of room when we need the room. Most visitors come at either this service or 10:45. And at 10:45, okay, so Saturday night, 70%. This service, about 81%, something like that. The 10:45 service, 92%. 92%. When most of our visitors come. If you take that and go, in September, when you see everybody come back, it's sort of the big season in church growth, and when people are kind of getting back and going, is this a church I want to be a part of? Those numbers grow into the mid-70s on Saturday. They grow into the mid-80s to upper 80s, and they grow to almost 97%. We've literally had days when we look at our math and go, we're 105, 108% full. Now, I know, you're like, that's not possible. That's because they're spilling out everywhere. Okay, that's not sustainable. That's just not sustainable. We have to do something about it. So if God moves, here's the point. We can't do anything. And I just feel like, you know what, God, you don't want that for us. So here's the fifth thing. It goes along with that. If we run out of room, we have no room for others. And if we have no room for others, we stop reaching people. And if we stop reaching people, let's call it quits. Let's be done. Because that's why we exist. And we should just shutter the doors and say, go to a different church where they actually are reaching people. We don't ever want to do that. And then number 6, because God is moving, and I just want us to be ready. I want us to be ready, right? I've spent the last month just talking, and we've talked about, right, the possibilities and preparing. God is doing something. We need a revival. God, come and pour out your Spirit. Listen, my generation and younger has never seen a move of God like some of you who are older. And we desperately need it. And you who are older know this to be the case because you know what it did for your generation. And we need the same thing for our generation. But look what happens. What if God does? Right? What I want is I want our net to be big enough and strong enough to handle the harvest that God might bring our way. This is not, if we build it, they will come. This is, they've come and we don't have the room. And we need a bigger shoe, right? So okay, let's do this. Let's go where God is taking us. Let's move with God. I don't have all the answers. I'm sure you're going to look at our frequently asked questions and you'll have other questions. We want to answer all this. I don't know the answer to every question. God does. We are following the breadcrumbs that He's left on the ground for us to follow. That's as best I can tell you. And we're trying to, by faith, go, Lord, you know what? We don't want to move, honest to goodness. I don't want to move. I love this place. But I sense you're calling us to move. And if we don't, we're going to be disobedient. And if we don't, we're not going to reach people that we would have never reached had we stayed and played it safe. I don't want to play it safe. Guys, I want to slide into heaven bruised and scarred and messed up and, hair all just jacked and going, yes, I made it. Right? We did it. Not like sauntering in and we played it safe. Let's move out by faith and see what God will do. So here's what I want you to do. You got this packet this morning? If you open it up, I want you to pull out this card right here. Okay? I want you to pull out this card, and this is our pledge card. And let's just look at it together. It says the move, and then in this little center section right here, it says, between now and April 2015, I pledge to give the amount listed below to the Move campaign. I understand that this is a gift over and above the Lord's tithe and my regular offerings. And so Michelle and I are going to fill this out, okay? We're going to fill one out. We're going to put our pledge amount, we're going to put our name, our address, all that stuff on here. We're going to be accountable. Somebody's going to be able to count that we've done this. And we're saying, okay, God, by your grace, by your ability, you're going to give us to do this. So I've told you now exactly what we're going to do. Now, what will you do? Willingly. I don't want to twist your arm. I want you to go, you know what? I want to be used by God. I want to see what God will do. What are you willing to do? What would God have you do? That's really the question. Not what Chris would do. It's what would God have you do? And ask yourself some questions. What would you give to make room for your neighbor, for your child, for your friend that doesn't know Jesus? What's that worth it to you? What would you do? What's it worth it to you for those of you that say, you know what? I'm not the same person. What's it worth it to you? See, I don't want to guilt anybody. I just want you to think, oh God, what would you have me do? And so here's how we're going to do it. The worship team can come. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do things a little bit different today. Those of you who come normally know that we normally take communion at the end of our service, and I've said, hey, let's not do it today, not because I don't think that's incredibly important. I've just said we're not going to do it today because I want to give everybody, I don't want to have so many moving parts. I want to give you a chance to just sit and think. Some of you are going to need to take this card home, and I get that. I get that. We're going to collect these cards over the next 3 weeks, and on the fourth week, I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to tell you how much we raised. Did we meet our goal? Did we exceed it? Did we come under? What are we going to do? Okay, and I'll let you know that. I'll let you know exactly to the penny how much we raised or how much was pledged. But I want you today to sit and think, and maybe you're with your spouse and you can look at each other and say, hey, what do you think? And so the worship team's going to play, and they'll play, like we do normally, our 3 songs. And we're just asking you during this first song to just sort of sit and consider, what would God have you do? And at the end of that song, the ushers are going to come down here. They're going to take up our offering. And you can put your offering, your tithes, all that stuff, and you can put your commitment card in the offering bucket if you're ready. And there you go. And we're going to say, God, by your grace, do this, okay? And so I'm challenging everybody in this room who calls Foothill Church their home to do that, all right? Let me pray for you.